What's up, y'all? Another Down the Middle podcast video. My name is Nomal.
Ryan.
And we'll be talking to you about the more recent developments between the tensions between Russia and the U.S. and basically how Russia is basically going to take over the world soon.
Yeah, they're going to take it over. Russia and the U.S. have been kind of like frenemies for a long time where there's a lot of tension there. It's not as subtle as China. I think China knows we don't like them, and we know that we don't like China, but there's a bug. There's a Russian spy. But the thing with Russia, we're allies on the surface level, but we have been competing basically since 1946.
Yeah. Russia's more like, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer, and we're definitely trying to keep each other as close as possible. So we kind of keep, it's like a checks and balances. We keep each other in check type of thing. Yeah. But if we do get the slight advantage, we'll probably take advantage of that and just try to
You'd like to think so, because they will.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about us, because it looks like we're on the weaker side of that, currently at least. But it looks like Russia's been doing a lot of work behind the scenes, which we'll be getting to right now.
Now, the thing is, they came after Trump for years and years and years about Russian collusion and about painting out Russia to be the bad guy and about Russia interference in our elections. And Donald Trump was actually somewhat hard on Russia in terms of, like he was with a lot of foreign nations, in terms of sanctions, in terms of policies and American stance. He was strong on these things. It was one of his strongest suits. Yeah, was his foreign policy.
Absolutely, he definitely used his. I think countries knew that you couldn't get around him. So that was the part where countries didn't try anything or try to experiment. Huh?
Was that a fat joke?
No, it wasn't.
Oh.
Could be. No, but in all seriousness, though, they knew that they couldn't try anything with Trump because Trump was like, oh, America first, and this and that. But with the thing we see the difference between his presidency and Biden's presidency is that more and more countries are more comfortable trying things. So it goes back to Iran doing the shooting around U.S. naval ships.
Or the evasive maneuvers with the ships.
Exactly. And then now with the Russians trying different things with the U.S. military, and we'll get into Ukraine and so on and so forth. But what we're seeing is basically the theme of people getting too comfortable around the U.S.'s presence.
And you see it all over. You saw Mexico on the first day with the increase in border surge and all the Mexican immigrants saying we're coming because Joe Biden's the president. And you saw Chinese doing flyovers of Taiwan because that's their next target with the U.S. is against them on taking back Taiwan. You see it all over the place where once Biden got elected, the water started to be tested. Even the conflict in the Middle East was very different from when Trump was the president. Just these countries reacted to Joe Biden's presidency, and now a lot of changes have been made. Some negative, some mostly negative.
Absolutely. But, and then going on with that, so now their reaction is more experimental, but then Biden's reaction is now he just doesn't even know what to do.
And just if I could jump in, just something to say is that this is a moderate podcast, of course, but we both don't think that Joe Biden is a strong leader. And that is not saying that he has 100% bad policies, just saying he's been very weak in his rhetoric. He's been very weak in his foreign policy. And I think that we can both say that nations around the world look at that and they see it as a potential weakness of us that wasn't there prior.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, then like I said before, it goes into how now countries are more comfortable trying new things with the U.S.'s presence as the world leader. And it goes into how Biden is just worsening tensions. So, for example, when he called Putin a killer. Yeah. Right? But then Putin's also not taking Biden necessarily seriously. And he actually called for an apology and explanation for why. But, I feel like it was Trump, he wouldn't really care. Yeah. But Biden's trying to toying around with him. He wanted a Zoom call with him. He's like, do you want to talk about it? That type of thing.
Exactly. The thing about Trump is, if you listen to Trump and Putin say this too. I watched a Megyn Kelly and Vladimir Putin interview, and they both say that, the world is a better place when Russia and America get along. Just like we speak about, nations care about economics more than anything. When a nation is profiting, they can push other things to the side, and American policies under Trump were better for Russia, and Russian policies, they benefited from what Trump was doing, and they care a lot about that. Putin says, I don't think Trump is a bad guy. He says that I think that his debate speech was a little bit loud and he was aggressive, but that they have a relationship. They're not friends. They're not calling each other before they go to sleep, but I mean, they had a relationship. And now we see when Biden comes in, the first thing that we hear him say about Putin publicly, because you have a long history between the two because of a senator, was that our first thing was that Putin's a killer.
Yeah, so going back to the whole countries do what's best for them. Right? Yeah, exactly. It's not about morally right or wrong, which we actually go into the other video as well. And now the way that Biden's worsening tensions, it's just putting a burden onto the relationship. And what we want to do is maintain and analyze and address relationships that we have currently, and not necessarily create a negative connotation to the relationships that we have now. So now with statements like that, it just creates more of a tension.
How can that be the first thing that you say publicly when you're running for president about a foreign ally? They're an adversary, but I mean that's definitely not. Trump walked into North Korea to speak to some of the most evil people in the world, and the first thing you say about Vladimir Putin, who's intelligent, whatever you want to say about Vladimir Putin, you can say he's evil, you can say he's intelligent, he has the support of his people, and they have a strong nation. So you don't want to call people killers when they have a potency that can be unleashed at any time. And we saw that with the pipeline recently.
His support is also kind of forced. Because,
that is true, though. It is true.
I mean, if nobody agrees with him, he does kind of kill.
That is also true.
Yeah, they're also same about that. But also, like, I think we're speaking more of like a general thing where people definitely are afraid to go against Putin, whereas Biden, we're seeing all these shenanigans going around. It's really our main point.
The support of his people, because the Russian military is bigger than ours. And these are voluntary enlistments that people are signing up to fight. I should say they're signing up to fight for the Russian cause at the same rate they're signing up to fight for the American cause.
Yeah. And so this whole relationship actually is kind of confusing because in one instance he says Putin's a killer, and in the other instance he sanctions the Russian pipeline to be built. So it doesn't really make sense to me.
Or he takes away the sanctions.
He takes away the sanctions now. So Russia can now build their huge pipeline all the way throughout Europe. Pipeline. Yeah. While in the U.S. he's disrupted the Keystone pipeline.
Keystone XL, yeah.
And then our own pipeline, the Colonial pipeline down in the south, has been hacked also by Russians. So it's kind of weird what's going on right now. But yeah, I mean,
and it's a very interesting because like the Keystone XL pipeline ran from Canada into the United States, and it supplied 11,000 jobs, union high-paying career jobs, and Canada was very angry when this was canceled on his first day. Executive order that canceled it. Very angry. Canada is literally our closest ally. I mean, they are as close to us as you can get.
Yeah.
And now that was a huge hit on our relationship with Canada. And now you also have the Colonial Pipeline, which was hacked 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks, yeah.
It was around 2 weeks ago, and it cut off 45% of our fuel supplies it affected everything in America, actually, because gas prices went up everywhere. And it was linked back to a Russian hacking company named DarkSide. And there's no repercussions to Russia, whether it's affiliated with the Russian government or not. They're based in Russia. They're a Russian organization. And this is like a international terrorist attack against the American economy, basically. The economy. How much did the economy fall that day?
A lot.
600, 700 points? Because we were texting about it.
Yeah.
I was looking at my Ameritrade. I'm like,
yeah, everything was going down that day. I'll say that much. Yeah, and it's just incredible because let alone repercussions, they just got a huge benefit from it.
Yeah.
Because not only did those Russian hackers get paid by the U.S. government to stop it, so we're also defenseless. So it puts our national security at risk. But also, now that you hacked our national grid, the pipeline, now you get one yourself. So it's just ridiculous because now you just, like, for example, taking out the Keystone pipeline, you're taking away jobs from American citizens, and that's the last thing we need to do, especially with the recent, with
the jobs report,
and now with the pipeline, or at least the formation of pipeline in Russia. Most of Europe is now dependent on that pipeline, and now gives even more power to Russia.
And yeah, exactly. Like you paid, and just another thing too. One thing that we have to start to do, and one thing we talk about on here, is that when these major events happen, you need to look at where they're going to go. It's not just like this event happened and that is going to exist in solidarity. There's always going to be, and the thing is now we've incentivized hacking American pipelines. You've incentivized attacking America because they paid DarkSide. Putin hasn't heard about it. And that's the end of the day. And we're not, the thing is barely even back online now. It took us a week to just get it back.
Yeah.
I mean, I think somewhere in the Carolinas, like 80% of fuel was gone.
It's just ridiculous. And like the fact that it didn't just start running back up is kind of like you got to pay extra for like express shipping or something.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Just add like $3 more million on top of that and we'll get you in 2 days.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
I mean, they got to talk to Bezos. But like, I mean, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which we're talking about, runs from Russia to Germany. And just some statistics on it. Anthony Blinken, who's the Secretary of State under the Biden administration, he was opposed, in his confirmation hearing for the Senate, he said he was opposed to building it. But obviously what these people say doesn't mean anything because it's like opposite day when you're a Democrat. But and then the European Parliament voted on this pipeline 581 to 5 in opposition of it. Huge opposition, because what it does is it makes this, like you said, the entire and most of Europe is going to now rely on Russia.
It basically destabilized Europe, and now it makes it more reliant on Russia. And like I said, it's going to increase Russia's power over that whole region, as well as just increase their economy, and then how much say they have in pretty much the economies of those Eastern European countries as well.
And one thing you spoke about before was the idea that we were talking about GDP and we were talking about military spending, and the fact that America is so much more rich than Russia that maybe some of these things that we look at the moment are not the most concerning. But then you have this, oil is one of the biggest exports in the entire world. The countries who can produce oil are extremely rich, and this is their biggest thing. If Russia is going to be able to now kind of control oil in Europe, their economy is going to skyrocket. They're going to make so much profit. Man. And if the thing that is giving you the most ease is the fact that America is much richer than Russia, then are you okay with the idea of Russia becoming much richer?
Yeah, it's I don't know. I think it goes hand in hand with the whole national security that we've been kind of facing, or the threat of national security. Because if Russia's able to easily hack into our systems, and then also easily, or and we're also paving the way for them to increase their worth or power, it just leads us to believe, like, so now who's the real leader of the free world, right?
Exactly. And I mean, the reason we did this video is because of Israel. It's because of the Palestinian conflict and how it happened. But before we jump into that, because we looked at that case and we had talked about intervention of a superpower and the lack thereof of American intervention. But before we get that, we'll talk like Ukraine and another country who is friendly with America. Ukraine doesn't have as much to offer. Like you said, they're at the disposal of Russia. They don't have like the resources they can give us like these bigger countries, but they've been friendly to America, and they're very anti-Russia because Russia annexed the
Crimea Peninsula. So basically, in the Obama administration, Russia annexed that region. So then there's been a whole like military conflict around that region as well. So Ukraine's never really liked Russia because Russia's really just threw them around. They had the power. And then I guess they were just naturally sided with the U.S. in general. But now we've been seeing a lot more Russian military activity by the Ukrainian border. And it's caused a huge security concern.
Speculation of invasion.
Yeah, there's a huge speculation of invasion. And then actually Biden made a statement about that, saying that, Russian troops should back off. And I mean,
you need to keep out.
He loves the Biden voice.
I mean, he says these very blanket statements. He just waves his finger around and he slams the desk a little bit, and then he expects everyone to just, Biden's angry. Yeah,
and actually, surprisingly, Russian troops did actually leave the region.
But you don't think it's because of that?
What I was going to get to. I don't believe it was because of that, especially since a week before Biden made that statement, this is around like the beginning of May. But a week before Biden made that statement, Vladimir Putin made a statement back saying, or not back because it was before Biden made that statement, but he said the Western world should stay out of this. So that's when it started. Then there's speculation of invasion. Then Biden made that statement, and then Russian troops left the area. But it's more so, I think, more like a regrouping and re-strategizing type of thing. I'm not here telling you that Russia will definitely invade Ukraine, but it's definitely something to look at.
And a story I forgot to add into here, I don't know if you've seen it. I don't know what the context of it was exactly, but Putin did say that he was going to knock the teeth out of any country who interferes. There's a Russian operation going on. I'm not sure if it's the Ukraine one or the pipeline, but his exact words that he is going to knock the teeth out of anyone who interferes with this Russian operation. So shows of strength, calls for violence, and Biden's doing nothing except for telling them what not to do. But then when it comes, like, one thing we spoke about with the speech and Tim Scott's rebuttal was the actions speak louder than words. Biden says these things, but then his actions contradict them completely. You wave your finger really hard at Russia, but then you remove the sanctions from them. It's like, you're saying all this stuff that sounds great, I love it, but then let your actions portray what you're trying to depict.
Yeah, and it goes back into the whole idea of the tensions between us and Russia, because now we're starting with the hacking of the pipeline, and then now we're just going to the military and how they've just kind of played with Ukraine and tried to, it's kind of like seeing what we're going to do. It's like, poking at somebody, and how far I could go. Yeah. That's kind of what Russia's doing with us, and seeing how far Biden will go in terms of, acting like the actual leader of the free world.
And if you want to look at Vladimir Putin as like a moral figure, he's not going to look at the fact that we're giving him leniency and we're appeasing him in all these ways, and then think that he's gonna ease up because there's appeasement in Russia, appeasement in Europe. I don't know if people know this, but appeasement in Europe didn't work very well in the 1940s when we appeased Hitler by obviously Germany and Russia. But you appease these people who have these low moral standards that we perceive to have low moral standards, and look what happens. You trust these people. You say to Hitler, you can do this, but then you have to stop.
Yeah.
Then he went and he did everything. Are we going to sit here and say that you can do the same with Vladimir Putin, to give him this little leeway and then just trust he's going to stay in those bounds?
Absolutely not. And like I said, like Russia's definitely going to take an advantage he can get. And like I said, he'll keep on poking as much as he can until he gets the power he wants.
If you poke Joe Biden enough, he might disintegrate.
Also, very true. But also going back to Ukraine, they were actually against the pipeline as well.
They hate the idea of the pipeline.
Yeah, they hate the idea of the pipeline. But also, like, just to put in perspective, like, they would be the first ones to receive the repercussions of Russia gaining that much power, right? So they'll be the first ones to, like, they're right at the door when Russia opens that door.
Yeah.
So they're obviously in fear of that. And how much help can we give from all the way on this side of the world, right?
Yeah. And how much help do we even want to give? We don't want to oppose these large. We don't want to go against China. We don't want to go against Russia. With these big nations that are acting now, we don't want to do anything about them.
Yeah, and actually that's a good segue into Israel because like we actually called this.
We called it
on the video. If you just look it up, just look under the last video of the Palestine and Israel conflict. We said Russia could be a possible, or like who's gonna, it would make us look bad.
Well, we said it was either Russia or China. China's not gonna do it, so
it's
basically
gonna be Russia.
Russia's gonna do it.
And that's exactly. Are we time travelers too?
I think we are.
We have to be.
So
we got George Washington, us too, and
maybe Putin watches the podcast.
Maybe Putin watches the podcast. He's like, you know what? He's like, bet
that is a good idea.
Очень хорошо. But in all seriousness, though, so Russia's actually stepped up to the plate and said, you know what? If you guys don't de-escalate this, I will, type of thing.
Well, it's a call for war against Netanyahu. He said that if the indiscriminate killing of and there's a huge, it's like 200 to 13. This was a couple days ago. If the indiscriminate killing of the Palestinians doesn't stop, then we're going to go to war with you.
Yeah, and then it goes back into what we were speaking about a couple days ago about if that does happen. So what do we do? Do we really want to go into war with Russia?
Yeah,
and also like
such a weird position.
Especially since we already know they could hack into our systems, right?
Yeah,
and then it does not make us look good if we don't get involved. And since Israel is one of our allies. And if we don't act up on that, how's that make us look? We look even weaker now. Yeah. Now Ukraine can't even.
We either lose an ally or we go to war with Russia.
But once you lose one ally, the other allies start to question that.
Yeah.
So for example, like Ukraine, like now they know that they're screwed because now they'll question like, well, if Russia attacks us, what do we do now?
Yeah, and you think you would look at that and say you either lose an ally or you go to war with Russia. Then there was no solution in the first place. There was, and it was America taking the lead on this in the first place because then Russia would never have to intervene. Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense, too. We said that if they want to make a push, and conspiracy theorists will sit there and say that they don't even care about what's happening in Israel and Palestine. They're trying to push America out of that spot.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know Russian politics like that. I don't know if Vladimir Putin has an investment in the Palestinian people like that. I'm not really sure, but it definitely does have that effect of America's on one side, and then Russia's going to go on the other side.
Yeah. So I didn't do too much research on this, but the Russians did have a relationship with Israel.
Yeah, I knew that one. Yeah,
it's actually kind of weird because now that they're coming in and saying like, "Hey, stop this," but because it's not like they were supporting Palestine and now they're on the opposite side because we're the ones who are supporting Israel and supporting their
even though we're funding the conflict.
We're funding pretty much. So for Putin to for Putin to come out and say like, hey, like if you want a problem, we'll give you a problem type of thing.
Yeah,
it really makes America, like we said in the previous video, it really makes us look weak. And now you combine that with the pipeline and then the hacking and then the military presence. It's just not a good look for us, honestly.
And there's a lot of factors in this because you have to get into Iran too when you speak about this Israel-Palestine conflict and what maybe Russia's relationship with Iran is and what Russia's relationship. We spoke Israel. Obviously, they're not as close to Israel as we are in America. But the idea was that Palestinians are being killed indiscriminately. This is a huge mess going on in the Middle East, and Joe Biden's not doing anything about it. He's doing everything but doing something about it. and Vladimir Putin steps in, and not just steps in, puts it down. And yes, Biden did come out and say you need to de-escalate, then it de-escalated, but it was actually Egypt who brokered this deal between them that de-escalated it. And once again, Joe Biden waving his finger at you is not the same as Vladimir Putin saying that he's going to go to war with you. So
yeah, I think in terms of closing comments, I think we just move on to that. In terms of closing comments, we've seen throughout the most previous events that are current events that have been happening, America's kind of like stuck in the mud in terms of action. In regards to internal conflicts, whether it's at the border or just foreign affairs with Russia and Israel and Palestine, we just have not been. We've been doing a lot of talking and not a lot of action.
Yeah,
and then that makes all of our allies really look like why are we allied with you? You know.
Yeah.
And then Russia, on the flip side, is doing what we should be doing as a nation, creating all the action, and kind of swaying it the way they want it to. You know, they're controlling the atmosphere of the world right now, and that's I think is a scary sight to see.
I think that that's great. It's just like one thing you have to realize here in America is that I just something we were talking about. Like, think about yourself for a second. You took a shower this week. You might have took a shower today, like I did, like Nomal did. There are countries in the world where you don't get that freedom. We have freedoms afforded us into America that countries around the world, people have no idea what that's like to be able to. I can walk down the street and get any food I want. We just have these different things that are afforded to us because of the success of our nation, because we have the national security we do, because we've fought off, we've never had invaders, but we've fought off oppressors, and we fought off people who have tried to take that away from us. You need to look at that and just realize how important it is to protect our national security and to be aware everything that's happening on the ground with us now. Look at the biggest movements: Black Lives Matter, immigration. You have huge now on American soil. You have huge Palestinian-Israeli conflict. These things we're only able to have this type of, now it's not just public discourse but violent discourse, because of the fact that we're the strongest country in the world. Exactly. And because in the past 250 years, we've been so aware of all the other nations and where they stand. So we just can't let that fall. You got to be, you can have all the passion you want about everything that's going on around in your immediate circle. You should, but also then you have to have that broader perspective of you need to be aware of this too, and what Russia's doing and what we're doing. I would just say that just keep that open mind about the things that everything matters, but it's all proportional, and nothing we're doing at home matters if we were to get invaded by Russia or we lose the currency to Russia or those things that would just make us weaker and make them stronger. Yeah, definitely. I mean, Ryan just pretty much summed it up. But we'll get into this. This probably would be another mini series because this is definitely a hot topic, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, I'd say, in terms of developments. And going forward, we'll just keep on commenting and tell you guys what we think. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Comment, like, subscribe. One more comment. Comment. If you can't shower and you didn't shower, go shower because you smell. Probably a true statement. And that's the down the middle recap. Just that one statement. That's right there. All right, guys. Yeah. I'm good. Yeah. All right, we'll see you later.